Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Glad you guys are here. It's another edition of Off Topic with Greg and I. Hope you guys enjoy. We always enjoy the conversation.
Always.
Yeah, always.
Always.
So Greg, how you doing?
I'm good. It's been a busy stretch that we're in the middle of. Lucy's soccer team. See, when she does her club season, I don't know if anybody's going to care about this, but when she does her club season, my weekends are booked. When she does her high school season, my weeknights are booked. So we are at the knockout round of the playoffs,
Nice.
round 2 quarterfinals tomorrow night. Well, this is recording on a Monday, so this I don't know when this will air, but the game may be over by the time people hear this. I don't know. So quarterfinals, and I'm busy, but I'm good. I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. Had Friday off and today off from work, so I had a 4-day weekend, so that was pretty nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, these 3-day weekends, I could get used to these.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I told my wife everything I didn't really do today, and she's like, "How did you get?" I literally told him, like, "Yeah, I went to the gym this morning, and I rode on the bike and listened to 3 of Greg's videos." She's like, "How did you have that much time?" I'm like, "Because I didn't go to work."
Nice. Yeah, I did about an hour and a half of yard work.
Nice.
And I did my taxes.
Oh,
I got
nice.
up, did the taxes. I was a little worried. Because I had some eBay purchases, or eBay selling. I got one of those 1099s, I think they're called. And then, YouTube throws me some crumbs every once in a while. And so then you're like, how's all this going to affect my taxes? And then I got kids that are aging out of the child tax credit. But it turned out okay. It's fine.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
So what's the plan? What are we talking about today?
Let's talk about changing direction of how we collect. What do you think?
Okay. Well, are you asking me if I've made any changes recently or if I anticipate some changes?
I'm asking you, or I could answer my own question, whatever you want.
I'll start.
Yeah.
I feel I've been on a big nostalgia kick lately.
Okay.
So like a lot of those cards from the 80s that I wanted as a kid. I picked up the King Griffey Jr. rookie. I picked up the 84 Donruss Mattingly. But I've been looking at like a couple of the Cal Ripkens I never bought, and like Tony Gwynn's, and some of that stuff is just, to me, they're just fun to have. And so but it's weird, and I don't know if you're this way. Certain cards, I want them like in PSA holders, and then certain cards, I think I prefer them in SGC holders. And a lot of those nostalgia cards from like the 80s, like if I were to pick up a Cal Ripken or something, part of me goes, do I want this in a PSA holder? Because when I was a kid and I was looking at these cards in cases, they were in PSA holders, and that's kind of what I envisioned.
Mm-hmm.
Do you are you completely blind to the holder?
Yeah, I think for the most part. For me, to be honest with you, I also pick up nostalgia cards, like cards for me from like 84 tops through like 84 to like 92, 93.
Yeah.
A lot of those that I pick up, for the most part, are actually ungraded.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot ungraded as well. And I've shown some of those recently, but like Fred McGriff, 86 Donruss rated rookie, ungraded stuff. Kirby Puckett, 85 Fleer, ungraded. Yes, I've been kind of looking at that stuff, but then I go, am I going to buy this? And go, why did I do that for? But then I got a couple of guys I really like, Brent Richards and Shane Shoebox Legends.
Great guys.
And they're always showing this new stuff. And I find myself like watching their videos, and I'll hit pause and I'm over on eBay going, well, what does that cost? There was this card. There was this card that my buddy Brent was talking about this Jeter card in his video that he posted. Again, this would have been Sunday night. He was kind of complaining about PSA, and he was showing some cards that he had submitted to PSA, and one of them was this Jeter card. And I was like, holy crap, that thing is awesome. And then I looked, I was like, do they have a Clemens one of these? And it's this card. I don't know if that shows up on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's got like the holes in it that have like a silhouette in the background.
Uh-huh.
And so there's a Clemens one.
Nice.
And it's like, there's like numbered ones out of like 500 or something. And then there's some out of like 50. But the base one like this, that's like a $20 card. And I'm like, dude, that is so cool.
Mhm.
So I was like, last night I was looking at the Clemens one, and I was looking at the Jeter one. So it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I find myself getting excited about all sorts of stuff. And then I bought that Superfractor the other day. I think it's right here. And let me grab it. Hold on. It's in the other room. Sorry, it's in the other room. But then I was like, I find myself kind of looking at those. And I'm like, man, these are awesome looking cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go back to the whole thing of, well, again, collect what you like. And I like a lot of that stuff. My issue is if I buy a former student's card, there aren't people knocking down my door to buy those. So then I'm like, they're not as liquid. We'll say it that way. So if I decided to move out of it, go, why did I buy this? You're going to have a harder time selling it.
True, but
Shohei cards are liquid.
Right.
Mantle cards are liquid. Jordan cards are liquid. But Matt Manning cards aren't that liquid.
Right, but that's the thing, though. The upside to that, though, I guess the flip side, not the upside. The flip side to that is they're also not that expensive either.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, if you need to move cards because you have like an emergency, moving the Matt Manning cards isn't going to make that much of a dent compared to other stuff, anyways.
Yeah.
So, I mean, personally, collecting those because you enjoy them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect. For a card, for cards that you don't know directionally where they're going to go, a lot of times, a lot of the new stuff does seem to depreciate with the exception of like some of those like super rare cards. If you're going to move into that kind of collecting forum, then, collecting Matt Manning, for example, is probably a good one, right? Because you could get a lot of his like really great cards for not insane amounts of money, right?
Yeah.
For like,
for sure.
For the price of like a Nap Lajoie T206 and like a lower grade, you can get the entire Matt Manning run of every single thing available on eBay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I don't have any imminent major changes to what I'm doing, but I do find myself constantly going through like the Rolodex of my cards and going, does that card still fit or does that card not fit? And, in a couple of days, we have another episode that's going to, air where we're going to be talking with Iconic Al and his brother, Brian, the High Pop Professor. And one of the things I'm going to talk to them a lot about is that question, because it's something they talk about all the time, is kind of shaping your collection, cutting off the dead weight to free up funds for this new thing.
Yep.
And I love that concept and that topic. And it makes me, but I guess the thing that I struggle with is I just like everything. I like everything from cards from the 19th century to some of the brand new cards.
Yep.
And it's really, really hard to stay focused because there's so much that I like. Like I literally like that Clemens card I just showed you. I mean, I think what year is that? It's like a 1999. So there's 90s cards, 90s insert cards to brand new modern cards. I just bought a big 2022 card
Mhm.
to turn of the century cards to pirate cards. So it's an ongoing struggle. So I don't know where I'm headed, but I like all of it. Where are you headed?
So it's funny because maybe 3 weeks ago I was looking at different cards, and some of the cards from my list for this year have jumped up, like even from the price I set when I made the list in like the end of December.
Really?
Yeah, a couple of them, and those are the ones I actually wanted to pick up recently. So I was like, yeah, you know what? They'll stay on the list, but is there anything else that I want to pick up? And I was looking at a bunch of vintage cards that I wanted, and I felt like all the ones that I wanted seemed to still be going up. So I was like, yeah, what else would I potentially want? And at first, I actually looked at what would I would consider a modern card. I think a lot of people wouldn't because it's 30 something years old now. But the '93 Topps Finest Refractor Nolan Ryan.
Yeah.
So I looked at that one and I was like, huh,
Yeah.
that'd be kind of cool to pick
Do you
up.
not have that card?
I don't have that card.
Okay.
So I was thinking about picking that one up potentially. And then I got the Heritage Auction catalog, and I was just kind of flipping through it watching TV. And I was like, oh, wait a second. That Ryan's cool, right? So I may get that at some point or not. But for the price of that Ryan, I could get some really kind of epic non-baseball, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, a Chamberlain rookie, right?
Yeah.
A Bill Russell rookie,
Yeah.
the Jim Brown rookie, Namath rookie. Like there's some sweet cards, right?
Oh yeah.
Even like the one that I actually have been looking at every day on eBay, and I'm just not ready to pull the trigger yet, is the 33 Sports King Red Grange. I think that image is
Oh,
just super
awesome
cool.
card. Awesome card.
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe move in the direction of not stopping baseball, but start adding a couple potential, non-baseball vintage cards to the collection. And then more recently, I sent an email to my buddy Jake at Legends Never Die and asked him if he could send me a link to the Hall of Fame autograph tracker that he put together,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have a ton of autographs, but I've got a bunch of baseballs that I used when I did my top 50 countdown video of the top 50 players. I had a bunch of baseballs, and I had some signed cuts and note cards. I say, you know what, it'd be kind of cool to track. I mean, I don't have, I've got, I think there's like 36 people on there, and I'm in like 33rd place. But I just thought it'd be fun to put some on. But one of the things I actually learned from going through the spreadsheet that he put together, he ranked every Hall of Famer their autograph by the difficulty to obtain it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some that I was actually surprised at how, I mean, it's not easy to obtain, but how I would assume be much more difficult than it was. So now I'm kind of like, wow, it'd be kind of cool to get like a, home run Baker autograph, or,
Mm.
One of these guys that played, at the, right around the turn of the century to, between, basically played 1900 to, or even like 1890 to like 1925. I think it'd be kind of cool to pick up a couple of their autographs. Obviously not baseballs. Most of those guys signed baseballs are insanely expensive, but signed cuts. And I found stuff online for a lot of these guys that weren't super ridiculously expensive. And a lot of them I assumed would be, even the ones that are expensive, I thought would be more, right? Like I found, who was it? Was I think like Alexander Cartwright, or one of the like original guys, like Harry Wright, or one of those guys, right? That, died in the 1800s, one of the guys, the founders of baseball. I found one of their autographs online, and it was like, I can't remember which one it was. It was like $3,500 or something. And I'm okay, that's not cheap, but wow, that's, to me, that's like, it's like when people collect George Washington and, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln autographs.
Yeah.
I was like, that's kind of cool. Cause I mean, that is, I mean, that's just post Civil War. So I didn't realize that a lot of those autographs are even obtainable. So actually having Jake add me to the spreadsheet, I learned something new, and it kind of piqued my interest in checking out a couple things. Now, at the same time, there's a lot of cards that I want, so I'm probably not going to spend a ton of money on these like super rare old autographs. But it is cool to kind of keep my eye open for some of the ones that don't seem to be crazy expensive, but would be just really interesting, I think, to acquire for the collection.
There's about 8 follow-up questions I now have to everything you just said. First thing I'd say is, you just alluded to it. Like, there's a bunch of cards that you want, so you're not going to run out and buy a ton of autographs. How do you decide what's next? How do you decide? Do you go with the Chamberlain or the Jim Brown or the Red Grange or the home run Baker autograph? Like,
So
is it
that,
what presents itself,
yeah.
or
So I have a spreadsheet that has all kinds of different things that I'm interested in picking up from different sports, including some autographs now. And it's basically sorted by the price I found some of the stuff for sale for, right? The numbers will change, something that I'm looking at will sell, and then one will go up for sale. That might be a little more, might be a little less, but in the range, right? And what I'd probably do is kind of similar to how I buy baseball cards, right? Which is, well, I have a certain amount of money and I'm willing to spend some percent of that on a card or on, in this case, an autograph. Then I can just go to the spreadsheet and say, okay, what are my options in this price range, plus or minus 10%? And I'll look at it and say, what am I feeling today at that price point? And that's probably how I'll pick some of the stuff up.
yeah? Now, in a card like, so you mentioned a couple of basketball cards, and then you mentioned a couple of football cards.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the Jim Brown. You mentioned the Red Grange Sport King, which I'd be totally interested in talking more about that 33 Sport King set in
Mm-hmm.
general. And then you talked about the Wilt Chamberlain rookie and then the Bill Russell rookie.
Mm-hmm.
How do you rank those four?
Like if I was going to go pick one,
Yeah,
um, luckily they're all sort of different price points, right? I think the Jim Brown, if you set them all at the same, grade range, right? And
sure,
I don't buy grades, but
sure.
the
Approximate
pricing,
condition.
right?
Yeah,
The pricing is based off that. So like, let's say I'm looking in the, you know, 4 to 5 range for the cards. The Jim Brown is probably the least expensive. And then depending upon availability, either the Grange or the Chamberlain would be second and or third, and then the Bill Russell would be the most expensive. So, and the price points are different enough, I think, um, by $1,000 or more. So it would be more budgetary, I think, how I would rank them. But if I were just to say, you know, I won a scratch off ticket for 15 grand, you
yeah,
know, which one would I buy if I'm only allowed to get one?
yeah.
I'd probably say either the Bill Russell or the Red Grange.
Interesting. Now let me ask you something about just we'll use the Wilt Chamberlain as an example, because the Wilt Chamberlain is a great example of a card that is really hard to find centered. That
Mm-hmm.
61 Fleer set
Mm-hmm.
is really, really hard to find centered. But I feel like the paper stock that Fleer used that year is pretty tough as
Mm-hmm.
in comparison to like the Topps paper stock,
Mm-hmm.
which like the Bill Russell rookie card is usually harder to find sharp
Mm-hmm.
than the Chamberlain. Um, how do you when you look at a card like a notoriously off center but iconic card like the Chamberlain, how important is sharpness? And again, this isn't a pre-war card. Now, a pre-war card, you're expecting rounded corners, but a card from 1961, not as much, right?
Right.
So where do you kind of rank centering on that 61 Chamberlain, which is really hard to find centered,
Mhm.
versus sharp and clean? Because sometimes they'll have some printer marks on them and stuff in that set. How do you? What are you looking for when you're getting the Wilt Chamberlain for your collection?
Um, I would say image sharpness first, right? Like I wouldn't want to get one with like a print mark on it. Especially like I mean, card obviously when it's a card of basically their face and there's a print line, it's going to go through their face, right? I mean, if you're lucky, it might go through their chest, but
Yeah,
it's either their
that's about his low bottom of his ribs,
right,
maybe between his belly button, maybe to his head. So it's
right.
his upper torso.
And you'd have a print line going through it. And I don't like that. So I would say print line. You know what? It's the same way I looked at my 52 tops Jackie Robinson, right? The most important thing is I don't want snow and I don't want print lines. That can't be there. Then centering's next. And then corners are third, right? Because if it's especially if it's a card that's notoriously off centered, I think getting a nicely centered one, I'd rather honestly drop a couple grades and get a nicely centered one that has soft or even rounded corners. Or to be honest with you, even like a slight crease, not too much of a crease, especially preferably a crease that you can only see on the back. But I'm okay with that. But I would say if it's a notoriously off center card, I'd go obviously as long as the image is clean. I would go with centering is the most important
Yeah,
item.
one of the things that I think, we know at this point, Dylan Double D is like the guy who talks about centering all the time, and you
Mm.
talk about centering, and you have to talk about Dylan. But but one of the things,
Congratulations, Dylan, for getting in the Hall of Fame.
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Five really good guys got in. Actually, it's
Yes,
pretty cool.
I agree.
Um, One of the things that I think that he says, it's sort of like when he's talking about it, he usually mentions this in the conversation at some point, but I don't know how much other people have gravitated to this point when he talks about centering. And centering does look better, right? It's
Mhm.
like the frame in your house, it's kind of tilted a little bit. It's just you want to straighten it. That's
Right.
kind of what center, but perfectly centered cards are rare,
Mhm.
and they're really rare with older cards when the printing techniques and the printing industry was not nearly what it is now. And you still see cards off center now,
Mhm.
but then they were all off center.
Right.
And so, when you look at the 61 Fleer Chamberlain is not a particularly rare card. Like the pop count is probably relatively high,
Right.
but what is rare is a perfectly centered one.
Right.
And so people sometimes chase like condition rarity. They
Mhm.
want a high grade because it's rare to find one in an 8.
Right.
But I think it's rarer to find one centered,
Yeah.
perfectly centered, than it is to find one in an 8. And I,
100%.
I wouldn't be shocked, and I mean Dylan has been beating this drum. I wouldn't be shocked if someday centering continues to exponentially gain importance to the point where if a card is centered, that's what's the rarest thing. Not that it
Mhm.
exists, but that it's centered. Now, there's some cards with the pop 8. That's obviously rare that it exists at all. But
Right.
when there's a card that there's more than, we'll say, 100 of,
Mhm.
how many of those are centered?
Yeah.
And that could really be the differentiator. And I was watching before I ever made a YouTube video. I don't know if I've ever talked about this. I randomly on YouTube one day found a Jabs family video, and he
Mhm.
was walking through a card show. I think it was the National, and that was like the genesis of me watching card videos on that. That was like before YouTube was like something would break in my house and I'd go to YouTube to figure out how to fix it. And
Right.
then that was it. And somehow I found this Jabs video and he's walking through and so I started going card show videos and I just started going watching card show videos. And it was all inspired by that one that just randomly fell in front of me. And I think I'm not positive if it was him. I don't think it was him. I think it was a different guy that I was just looking at a card show video. And this guy was walking through a card show and he was talking to vintage dealers. And this guy is talking to a vintage dealer and he says, would you rather have like a high grade card or like in a 5 or like a centered one in like a 3 or a 4? And the dealer said, I'd rather have a centered 1 than an off-centered 9. And it was like my head exploded because I had never considered that before. Because for me, it was always, is it a pack fresh looking card? That was, is it sharp? Is it clean edges? Is it sharp corners? If it's got some printer dots, if it's a little off center, like what's the big deal? That's how it came out of the pack. And the thought of, and this dealer said, I'd rather have a centered 1 than an off-centered high grade. And I was just like, it was sort of a game changer in the way I looked at cards. And I thought it was obviously interesting. And not every card that I have is perfectly centered by a long shot. But from that moment on, centering changed in my mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for me, centering, I would agree for the most part with what the dealer in the video said. I think for me though, on cards that are tough cards, especially really tough when it comes to centering, I'm more of a side to side guy than a top to bottom guy. So if the card is like really well centered side to side, but it is, you know, a little off center top to bottom, I'm okay with that, depending on the card, right? Like it's always a budget thing, right? If the card, you know, if I could pick it up in a higher grade that's cleaner and better centered for, you know, still within budget, I would. But for cards where, you know, at my price point, I wouldn't want to spend more than a certain amount and I can't get something that's perfectly centered or super clean, you know, I'd go with a really good side to side, especially on something like that Chamberlain that's notorious for being off centered. Same honestly with the Jim Brown too.
No, that horribly difficult to find that card centered. 100%.
Which is funny because I made a purchase the other couple of weeks ago, and I was actually trying to get a Jim Brown rookie. I made offers on a couple of them on eBay, and they were, you know, pretty solid. I looked at a 5 and I looked at a 6, and I offered because both of them were or best offer, and I offered the first guy $100 less than what he was asking, which isn't, for that card, isn't a big ask.
And a 5 or a 6, that's not a big discount.
Right. And he came back and said no. And then I offered a different guy. I think I offered on the 6, I offered $100 off, and he came back and said no. So then on the 5, I offered $100 off, and this different seller came back and said no. And I was like, then why would you put or best offer, right? Because I literally, in both cases, asked for like a 3%, 3, 4, 5 max percent. No, it was 3-4% discount basically, right? And they both said no. So I'm like, all right, so why even have it best offer? And that pissed me off. So I went back and bought a pre-war baseball card instead.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a whole nother can of worms we could go down, is the whole best offer and the whole dance of, you know, making offers. But I'll say this, a Jim Brown rookie card that's centered, to me, because it's rare, same with the Wilt Chamberlain, it's like I think it's like at least a 25% premium.
And I agree.
If it's in the comp range and it's centered, it's worth buying. Like if it's a
100%.
5 And the range is, I don't know that range in a 5. I'm going to guess it's like 2,300 to 2,800 for a 5. It
Mhm.
might be more than that. But let's just say it's 23 to 28. If there's a centered one and it's under 3,000, and it's a 5 with the 5 characteristics again.
Mhm.
A 5 is just a number, but it's got the characteristics of what you'd expect, and it's centered. I mean, and it's under 3,000. I think that's a steal.
100%. I actually would have been fine paying asking price on the 6 was a little high, but the 5, I would have paid asking price, no problem. I thought it was a great deal, but they set it up as or best offer. So I'm going to take them up on the option for our best offer. And that's why I felt like, hey, I'm asking for a 3% discount. If it's I think it was like a 23, I think he was asking like 2,300, not for 2,200. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to haggle with you, 2250, right? Like, give me a break. Then why even bother? That doesn't even, that discount doesn't even cover the tax, right? It's like, so, so for me, it was more of a, I got curmudgeon-y, and, I was like, no. And that's the thing. Had he just said for sale, 2,300, no or best offer, buy it now, I probably would have just bought it. But the fact that he offered up the option, that annoyed me. When it happened twice, it put me off that day, and I ended up buying something else. But don't worry, I'll be checking that stuff out again next month.
Right. I know. Um, let's go back to the Sports King set for a second.
Love it. Okay.
And I love it too. And so if you're not familiar with it, it's 1933. Did Gaudi make it, or was it like the
Yes.
sister company of Gaudi? I think it was Gaudi, right?
Yeah, it was Gaudy, the Gaudy, yeah, 33 Gaudy Sports Kings.
So it's a variety of sports. It's
Mhm.
everything from ice skating to uh, different Olympic sports. There's football cards, there's baseball cards, there's golf cards, there's basketball cards, and there's like 3 of each sport or so. I think it
Mhm.
depends on the sport. There's tennis, and it's I mean, it's an attractive set. I mean, there's even Duke Hanamoku,
Yeah,
the like a
the,
legendary surfer.
the surfer
Uh,
set. Yeah.
he's in there as a swimmer because he swam in the Olympics,
Right.
uh, but he's a surfer. If somebody's looking to build a set or looking a pre-war set that's not super rare, is actually kind of affordable, and they want to kind of do something a little bit different,
Mm,
I think that you
I
don't have
agree.
to look too much further. I think I have three cards from that set. I have Gene Sarazen, a golfer. I
Mm.
have Walter Hagen, a golfer, and then I have the Seppala card, the dog sledder one. Hold on. Which our buddy David gave me
Mhm.
after I lost my doggy.
Yeah, that's super.
And I've
That's super
got
awesome card.
3 of them, and they're just, they're same size as the 33 Gaudi baseball. Um, and they're just fantastic.
Mhm.
Yeah, the
Well,
Gaudi Gum Company. Um,
yeah, I mean,
there's a
there's
there's a card in that set that I think is a Grail card. So hear me out on this.
okay.
I don't know if you heard this, but I think it's Prism WNBA boxes are going for more than Prism NBA boxes right now because of Caitlin Clark.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so there's like all this hype about Caitlin Clark, and she's like a transcendent player, and you know, she's completely changed the way that people look at the WNBA. She's completely changed the way that people look at women's sports cards,
Mhm.
right? I mean, she's a major chase that a lot of people are going after. And in my opinion, the ultimate female athlete card is in that set.
Mm.
And I mean, because you got to remember, it wasn't that long ago that they didn't have women's sports.
Mm.
You know, it was like, I mean, in the I don't know the date, but what was it, like the 60s that they had high school women's sports started up?
Mm.
Like it wasn't that long ago. And I mean, we're only talking about 65, 70 years ago that started. Somebody correct me, I'm sure, in the comments below. But my mom said, I mean, she grew up in LA and she said that she didn't play sports. She would have like run track and played some sports, but they didn't have sports when she was in high school. And she was born in 53. So she would have been 18 and 68. And they
Mm.
didn't have women's sports when she was in high school. So I don't know when that all kicked in, but Babe Dietrichson is like the greatest female athlete of all time. I mean, she won the heptathlon.
Mm.
She won like U.S. Opens and golf tournaments. She's like an unprecedented female athlete, and she's got a card in that set,
Yep.
and it's a beautiful card. I believe, if I remember, it's got an orange background, and she's like jumping over a hurdle, I think.
Mm.
Um, it's a card that if women's sports and women's sports cards continued to grow in the hobby, I think if you go back, I mean, what's a better women's sports card than that card?
I agree. I agree. That's a great. I mean, the set in general. I mean, and that's the nice thing about the set. If you collect the set, you get her, right? But then you get Duke as a swimmer. You
Yeah,
get golfers. You get boxers. You get
yeah.
a couple basketball players. You get, I think, like a
There's a Jim Thorpe card in there.
yeah. There's a Jim Thorpe. You get a Ruth. I think it's like a Carl Hubble and a
Yep,
Ty Cobb.
yep.
Um, it's got some. I think it's like got some billiard players.
Yeah, it does.
And so it's a really fun
There's
set. And
a
to be honest,
the
other than the Ruth, you could get most of those cards. I mean, it's from the 33, so who cares if it's in like a very low grade? It's just a cool card. Other than the Ruth's the only one that's like even in a one is still pretty pricey.
yeah, and uh there's a Bobby Jones card in that set.
Yeah, it's
That's
his
it's
rookie
not
card.
his rookie. His
Well, I
rookie
guess
is
yeah.
actually like 10 years earlier, but and then there's a caramel card
Mm,
that are like his two most expensive cards.
yeah.
It's one like in a one, it's $1,000 card, but not a lot of them go crazy high. Like there's a lot of them under $300, and
Mm,
then there's a lot of them between like 1,000 and 3,000 in like a decent looking grade.
mm.
It's a fantastic set, but
Yeah, I agree.
when you mentioned it, I was like, oh, we gotta at least talk about it. But I really think that at some point someone will look back at the pinnacle grail women's athlete sports card is that Babe Dietrichson Zaharias card.
I would agree.
So, um, I feel like there was something else we were going to talk about.
You want to talk about Strongsville?
Oh yeah, that's what it was. We were going to talk about Strongsville. So, let me ask you this: last year when we went, you had a very clear, decisive plan on your attack, and I think that uh, you realized I have to be a little bit more open.
Mhm.
But are there certain things in particular that at this year's Strongsville, and then I mean, or the national, Strongsville's second weekend of April, and then the national this year, I think, is technically falls in the beginning of August, first week of August. So they're 4 months apart. As we go into those two big shows, do you have a plan of attack, or do you go, okay, any of these 30 cards that I come across, I'm good? Or is it, any of these 5 cards I come across, and I'm good.
So for the national, I don't have a plan yet because I don't know what my budget's going to be. But for
Mm.
Strongsville, I think I have an idea what my budget's going to be. So my plan this year is the opposite of last year. I'm going there with 0 cards on a list. Petty's head just exploded, but I have no list for Strongsville. I'm just going to go. I'm going to walk around, and then when I see stuff that I want, I'll buy it.
Yeah. And could somebody have a successful Strongsville experience and not buy anything? Because I at one point I was sitting. I took a breather on Saturday, the second day of the show. I was kind of sitting on a bench, kind of by the entrance,
Mm.
and
Where did you rent
I
the
was
skates?
looking. What's that?
It's where you rent the skates.
It was just inside. It was in the room of the card show,
Oh,
but there
okay.
was a bench outside of it, and I was looking at the 49 leaf spawn that I bought,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just kind of sitting there, and Dave Blue Jacket walks up, and he comes and he sits down next to me, and I said, "What have you gotten? What have you bought?" And he goes, "Oh, I haven't bought anything." And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "No, all these guys are just so determined to spend money." He goes, "I don't feel like I have to spend money." He goes, "I'll spend money when there's something worth spending money on."
Mm-hmm.
And but I haven't bought anything yet. And he goes, I might. He goes, actually, you know what? I take that back. He bought these wrappers of Cons wieners. They're hot dog. It was like a sticker
Yeah, I
on the
remember.
outside of a
Mm-hmm.
Cons hot dog package, and I think it was Carl Yastrzemski was one of them. He bought like 2 of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like 2 of them were like $5 or $10,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all he had bought. Do you live in a reality where if you didn't buy anything at Strongsville, it could still be a successful trip?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
So
so.
seeing me is
Mm-hmm.
worthy of making the trip all the way to Cleveland?
Yeah, just seeing you, seeing all my buddies there, I think is worth. I like one of the things that I've been realizing over the last like 6, 7 months is I mean, when I buy a cool card that's on my list, I get excited for myself because I got the card. But I'm realizing that when my buddies pick up a big card for them and they're just really excited about it,
Yeah.
I'm just as excited as I am when I pick up a big card. So if I went there and there was nothing that really kind of like what Dave said, right? Like if there's nothing there, that I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to buy a card just to buy a card. But if there is something there that I want, I'll buy it. But if there's nothing there that I want, then cool, I'll take the budget and go do something else. Now, with my expansion into other sports as well as autographs, there probably will be something there that I'll want because there are great autographs there, if I recall correctly. And there's definitely more than just vintage baseball.
Hmm.
There's vintage other stuff, not modern. But um, I think I'll probably get something, but if I don't pick something up, and that was my issue last year, right? I went with the plan for one specific card and I didn't have it. And this year, I couldn't possibly do that this year because the only reason I stopped being cranky was our friend David
Hmm.
gave me some advice and helped push me to make some moves. He's not going to be attending this year, so I don't want to risk it. So I'm not even bringing a list. I'll just see what I've got and I'll pick it up if I like something.
Yeah. You actually did buy a card the first day.
I did, but not at the show.
Correct.
Yeah,
You bought
I bought
from Dawn the 53
yes,
Jackie.
bought a 53 Jackie from Don. Yep.
Yeah. Now, just because I'm excited that you're really considering buying some football cards, because I've been trying to pull a lot of you guys into that, opening up that like when Dorothy opens the door and it goes from black and white to
Mhm.
color. What are Now I see over your shoulder you've got a really nice Johnny Unitas rookie card. So it's not that you don't have any football cards.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I've got it. What do I have over here? I've got a Unitas rookie. I've got a Ronnie Lott rookie, a Jerry Rice rookie,
Yeah.
and I got a Patrick Mahomes rookie, but you can't see it.
So, what are 5 football cards? You mentioned one, so let's throw that one out. The Jim Brown you mentioned already. So
Let me open up my list.
Yeah, I want to know what 5 vintage football cards that you have your eyes out for.
My top 5. Looking at my list. My top 5 would be the 58 tops Jim Brown, the 65 tops Joe Namath, the 33 Sports King Thorpe, and the 33 Sports King Graig.
Which one of those would you prefer?
Honestly, I would say the Graig. I like the image more on that one, and it's less expensive.
That's the one where he's got like a leather helmet on, right?
Yeah, he's got the leather helmet, which I think is pretty sweet, right?
It's a very cool card. And I don't think Thorpe has a helmet on his, does he?
No, he's just like standing up with like a green shirt on.
Yeah. You can make the argument that Thorpe is one of the most underappreciated for what he was guys in the hobby.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make that argument. I mean, that guy is freakish athlete.
Yeah, he's one of the greatest pure athletes of all time.
For sure.
And then number 5 would probably be just looking at the list. 48 leaf Chuck Bednarik.
Our buddy Don,
yeah,
who's a big football card collector. He's so far. He's got such a broad collection of football that now he's looking at like, varieties within. And have you ever heard of the Joe Namath rookie butterfly variant?
Yeah, and it's like on his hand, right?
There's like a print mark on his hand that looks like a butterfly that in one of the printing runs is there, but it's not in the others. And so he's like, yeah, I gotta get a Namath butterfly variant. And I'm like, dude, when that's where you're looking in your collection, you're next level.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And that's the thing. I have a pretty solid list of football cards. My basketball card list is much shorter. It's literally 5 cards. It's the 48 Bowman Mikan, the Fleer Chamberlain, the Lou Alcindor rookie, the Russell rookie, and the Bob Cousy rookie. And that's kind of my basketball list. But for football, I've got about, I don't know, 20, 25 on my list total.
No Oscar Robertson, no Pete Maravich, huh? No Julius Erving.
I mean, maybe late. It's kind of like I look at the Julius Erving rookie kind of the way I look at like the Walter Payton rookie, where it's like it's a little newer.
Yeah.
So it would be cool to have, but it's not as high of a priority. It's like I still, even though I'm even though I'm potentially expanding into new sports, I still want to keep it fairly vintage, right? I mean, I don't buy a lot of even baseball cards from the 70s.
So at what point do things like the Newt Rockne Chickle and the Beecher Goodwin Champions and the that whole the pre-war
so the Chickle Rockne's on my longer football list. The Beecher and the Anonymous are not, just because I don't have any. I have no cards that in the grade I'd buy them would fall into what I consider my tier 1 list, because at that price point, there are still some baseball cards that I'm very passionate about and I would love to pick up. So I don't have any of any other sport cards that are at that price point, but yeah, I mean, the Chickle Rockne. Honestly, the only one I would consider that would be I consider a tier one would maybe be a Nagurski.
Yeah.
If it was,
Nagurski, that was another one that was kind of
it'd have to basically be, even if I was wanting to splurge, it would still be a one.
really expensive card.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, the Anonymous that is probably more expensive, isn't it? I mean, there's only like
yeah.
what
Well, the
30 of
anonymous
those
is
or something.
the anonymous is probably more expensive. There's not a lot of sales data for that one, and I probably wouldn't buy that one. I mean, I wouldn't never buy it. That would be way down the road, like 15 years, right? Like it's like cool. I picked up everything that's feasible, right? I'm probably not going to have like an Eddie Plank or a Honus Wagner or a Ruth Baltimore News or even a Ruth M101. But like, or a our buddy Tony's favorite, the Joe Jackson Old Mill red border, right? Like I wouldn't have cards like that ever. But when I pick up a lot of the other stuff outside of that, then yeah, I would potentially, look at an anonymous.
A person who has a sneaky, amazing football card collection is Orlando.
I know.
Orlando has
I know.
some massive football cards, and I don't know how many people know it because I mean, he shows them, but I don't know. Like he's got some crazy football cards.
He have the I know he has a Beecher. Does he have the anonymous also?
Yeah,
He
he
does,
has
right?
two.
Yeah.
He had two Beechers. He sold the lower
Right.
graded one.
He
He
sold the
has an
lower grade one
anonymous
to
now. His
Don to buy the red cob polar bear at
Yeah.
Strongsville last year.
I think his anonymous is what set is that from? It's a black border
The
and
Mayo cut
Mayo.
plug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mayo Kepler. He his I believe is authentic.
Mm,
I think it has some color added if I'm not mistaken, but it's actually a really nice looking copy.
mhm,
Uh but yeah, I mean, there's like very few of those.
mm.
You could sell that and just go on a spending spree with what he would get for that.
And that's the thing I think with Orlando, there's certain cards that he has like an emotional attachment to, right? And I totally
Yeah.
understand that. I think that his Tim Keefe and his
Oh,
anonymous,
dude.
those are cards that he could, if he went to a show and sold both of those, he could pretty much buy, I mean, anything he wants that's in the five-figure range, right?
What is his keep is like a 7 or
Yeah,
something?
it's like a 7 or an 8 or something, right?
It's the
So
highest graded, right?
highest graded, yeah.
Now this
But
is just for people listening. Correct me if I'm wrong, Darren,
Goodwin
but
champions.
Goodwin champions, Tim Keefe, and I think a 7, highest ever graded. I mean, in a 1 or a 2, that's a big card.
Right.
I mean, but
Right.
he has the Cap Anson from that set in I don't remember the grade, like a 5 or something. I mean,
He has a nice one of those
it's
too.
a massive it's a massive card.
And that's the thing though, he's got an emotional attachment to those cards, which I
Of
completely
course.
understand.
Of
That'd be
course.
like me saying, "Hey, I could sell my Ryan rookie
Yeah.
and then
Right.
go buy something else." But it's like no matter what I buy, it wouldn't it wouldn't be close to as meaningful to me. So I would never sell the Ryan. I think he feels the same way about those cards. The only reason he sold the Beecher is because he had two of them.
Yeah. And his one was a spectacular one.
Yeah,
And if I'm being honest with you, if I could go back, I might have made a play for him for that. But
nice.
Don's the one that bought it.
Yeah, Don
My
bought
buddy
it.
Don.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to have one of those.
And all that went down to Strongsville. See, and that's the kind of stuff. That's
Ah,
why I like going to
dude.
Strongsville. So even if I don't buy anything, I get to see that kind of stuff, right?
Are
And
you gonna bring anything to maybe sell there?
to sell, no.
Yeah. No. Okay.
I'm not. I sold the card recently, and I totally screwed up like every aspect of selling it. Um, and I don't regret it because my buddy Scott bought it, and I know he loves the card. So there's very few cards I've got in my. Let me rephrase. There's a lot of cards I'd be willing to sell, but they're not really important cards. So like, it's not worth me bringing like 50 cards that are worth like 15, $20 each to try
Right.
to sell them. It's just not worth my time or trying to. I'd have to have an extra. I'd have to check a bag, which I don't do.
Yeah.
So for me, none of my bigger cards I want to sell. I literally I went through. I pulled some out of the safe deposit box a couple weeks ago. I brought them back. I think it was a Friday, but I just kind of had them all spread out on the table, and I was looking at all of them. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. There's literally, because the thought popped in my head is, is there some stuff I would consolidate? But I looked at all of them. I said, nope. There's not a single card in my top 200 cards in my collection. So anything that would be worthwhile trying to move to get budget, none of them, not a single one was something I'd be interested in selling.
I'm thinking about bringing a few things
What are you thinking?
in case. Well, I don't. Uh, there's nothing that I don't want. Everything that I have, I enjoy having.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some things that I really want that I don't think. If I needed something to take the deal over the top or liquidate to be able to have the funds to go after something in particular, there's 2 or 3 cards that I really want to land at least one of this year, and I don't think just the amount of cash that I'd be able to save, I'd be able to get one that meets what I need it to meet.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like when I went to the National, I want one of the cards on my list was a Walter Johnson and T206, and I like
Mm-hmm.
both. I like the hands at chest. I also like the portrait. I'd like to have both at some point. And you go through the room, and you're like, all I can afford really is a 2,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not seeing any 2s I like.
Yeah.
So I had to step up to a 3 to get one that I was really happy with. And then when you do that, you're kicking in another, $500 to $700.
Mm-hmm.
And I just there's 3 or 4 cards I think I really would like to at least land one of them this year. And I might have to go up a grade to get one that I like. And that might mean a sacrificial lamb go to make it happen.
No,
So,
that makes sense.
but I'm between now and then. It's only 2 months away, less than 2 months away. I'm gonna make a couple of passes through the collection and try to find some things that I could maybe use. So,
Nice.
well, we're at almost an hour, buddy.
I was going to say, so you look at some of those pre-war cards the same way my dad does. So at the National, it's always fun. He usually doesn't look for stuff for himself until the last day, but that's what he does. He'll go look for a card and he'll find it. I'm like, what? Like super rare card that, maybe there's one of at the National and he'll find it. He does the same thing. He'll like, man, I see the card, and he looks at it and he's like, it's not nice enough. I'm like, that thing is perfect. No, if you look very closely here, there's a speck. I don't want this one. I need to find a nicer one. I'm like, all right. And it's always fun to go watch him shop, because he's kind of like you are with the pre-war stuff, where it's like, I have a card in mind, but it has to be the right one. And if it's not the right one, I'll just wait for the right one.
And the
Or just
right
go to a higher.
one, what I think a right one might be is it's like sometimes I go, I don't want one with a crease, but sometimes I'll see one and it's really nice except for the crease. And wherever the crease is in that particular one, like my Johnny Evers, it has a crease in it, and but the crease doesn't bother me.
Mhm.
And sometimes, depending on what the crease looks like and where it is, it does bother me. So you just have to hold your standard. It's like it's like the way to think of it is you're aging, you want to get married, you want to have kids, right? Doesn't mean you should just marry the next girl you meet at the bar. You
Right. Yeah.
still
Don't
want to
rush into
hold your
it.
standard high.
Yeah.
You still want to find the right person,
Mhm.
even though you're feeling like the clock is ticking. You just can't get impatient, because ultimately you'll probably regret it.
Yeah. Because once you make the investment, you've got it.
Yeah. All right, bud.
Cool.
We're
It's
at an
been about an
hour.
hour.
That was a fun hour, though.
Yeah. Enjoyed the conversation for sure.
Yeah, I love hanging out. I
Me
just wish
too.
we could do it more often. I wish we could quit our jobs and just do this every day.
I'm with you.
That would be fun if we had a live stream every day, and if anybody watches or chimes in, cool. But we just hang out for an hour every day and talk
We
about
just
this
chat
kind of
for an hour
stuff.
every day. Exactly.
That
Yeah,
would be awesome.
be fun. Right on. Well, hey, thanks everybody for watching. As normal, let us know in the comments if you finished it up. Appreciate it. And yeah, we will catch up with you guys for the second version of Off Topic, probably within a week of this one dropping.
Yep.
All right. Well, until next time, thanks everybody for watching. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you,
And
my
we'll
friend.
talk to you guys later.
See ya.